Alright, welcome in guys. We've just got a long recap to do on this Neo Geo now. So the customer's paid for the recap and the clean RGB. So we're going to go through and do that basically. So this is the fully working console. Just move the cover out of the way. We tested this in the last video. We just had to fix one trace on the board. So let me just show you where we had before. So originally under the power button here, we had some trace rot from this pin down to here basically was the only issue, and I reflowed some pins on there. So that's the fix for this one. And now because it's fixed, the customer wants obviously the recap because we recommend it, because obviously this one's potentially caused by leaking caps, but the rest obviously need doing anyway. They're going to have a UniBIOS 4, so instead of the 3 that's on, I've gone ahead and programmed the UniBIOS 4 that we can chuck on once we're done with the recap. And then the RGB, even though it works, the colours are out, so we're going to tune all that. So it's going to be just doing the recap first. That'll be a good, probably, hour, to be honest. It takes a while, there's that many caps. Thanks, Ian. Funnily enough, it's just a haircut, to be honest, and the beard trim, but I've just started the gym again. I'm going to really try and push to get a bit in shape now. Put on that much weight over the last 10 years. I really need to try and get some off again. But I think it's just a crafty haircut making me look a little bit slimmer for now. So we've got, on these, I sometimes just hot air all of the caps off. Tends to be what I do. I can show you a few methods of removing these. And then we're going to replace pretty much everything with ceramics except the power caps over here, which are going to need to stay. But I'll just show you a few techniques of getting the caps off, and I probably will hot air them off because it's going to be the quickest. So we have over here the 2 pins for the caps. So the obvious one is to first flick over the board. Yeah, we can see the cap, and what we want to do is just flow some solder on both pins at the same time, like this. And then while you're doing that, you want to basically put your hand underneath on the cap or get grips, whichever work. And this will be the awkward thing for, probably need to pull focus up and try and get this in frame. So we have that there. Let's zoom out a bit, we don't need it that close. And what we want to try and do is I'm going to use some grips here just to grab the cap. And I probably won't be showing this off for every cap because it's going to get very monotonous. I'm just going to grip like that on the cap, and then sort of apply a little bit of downward force, not much because we don't want to pull traces out. And while you're pulling on it, you can warm up the cap pins. So I tend to warm up the cap pins for a few seconds before even trying to pull, and then you can pull. It's a bit awkward from this angle, like so, and you can hear it doesn't want to move very easy. So this is why I don't tend to do this method, and I'm probably not even going to bother doing that, but that's the method that most people use. What I do is the exact same thing. I'll grab the grippers, but I'm going to hot air onto here instead of the iron, and then pull these out. So that's the preferred method I'm going to do instead of, you know, potentially tugging. So all I'll do is position this up. Sometimes if I'm working on it for a while, I'll just get like a phone stand like this, rest the board on, And now I can just get hot air from here and quite comfortably work and pull the caps out. The only thing you have to be aware of is, on this specifically, these plastic bits here. If you get too hot for too long, you're going to start melting the plastic that's making contact with the board. So the key here is get the board hot, but not for too long, so you want the temperature quite hot. And this can popcorn the board, so this is the Neo Geo can get too much heat when doing the recap if you're not too careful. If you start seeing popcorning, which is basically the moisture inside the board evaporating and the air expanding and bubbling the board, you move the heat away straight away. You can pierce the board with tweezers to allow the heat to escape, and then you can flatten it back down. So if you're quick enough, even if something like that happens, you can sort of recover the board, but it doesn't do too much damage. And that's something that will happen on these, I notice, regardless of which method you use. They tend to retain a little bit of moisture. Repair a fluke, we don't really work on them at the minute. We're focusing on just the consoles because we get so many of them. Wii systems, we don't do Wii systems. I actually give a load away a few weeks ago. They're just not worth working on in terms of the amount of effort they take to do, basically. And the first cap will always take a lot longer to warm up as the whole board in general gets warmer. So once this first one comes off, you'll tend to find the rest come off fairly easy. So you can see the one next to it's actually already ready, which means this one's just caught on, more than likely. Just the pins of the cap are bent, so we can't get this one out as easy. There we go, so that's two out. And then as you go around, you'll find all the others in the vicinity will come out quite quick. Yeah, for the fluke I've already mentioned, maybe it was a delay. We don't work on other things at the minute. We just focus on the consoles that we have in, because we have that many, we can't keep up with these anyway. We've got two more under there in that one area, and then we can move further down. So this is just a monotonous task, basically. That's why it was perfect for a stream. You're just going to be sitting here watching a recap for a good while. So if you've got any questions, this is probably a good stream to ask them on, because there's just a lot of mundane work here in slowly removing all these caps, and then we'll have to, obviously putting the new caps on won't take long at all, but taking them off certainly will. And then I'll show you, you can probably hear the music playing at the minute. I'm going to show you something that we've just sold that I made myself for PlayStation 1, so you can see the PlayStation here. It's a maxed out PlayStation with every game, every sort of PS1 game ever made on there, and an X station to load off the SD card and a HDMI output, so it's pretty cool. I was building one for myself, and then a customer's already brought it, so I need to build another one for myself, but I thought I'd show this off anyway. Replace the caps because they get old, basically, and then the electrolyte, the fluid inside of these caps, specifically the aluminium caps, leak over the board and rot the board. So that's why. So these caps, you can heat one up and it'll explode and you'll see there's fluid inside, or we can cut the lid off one and you'll see there's basically an alkali solution inside called electrolyte, and that leaks over the board and causes trace rot. So if we look at, well, you'd have to look back on the other stream really to see what I'm referring to specifically, but the repair I did, for example, down here, even though it might not have been caused by capacitor leaks, it was very similar to that. It basically turns the board like a dark green or dark black and then rots through the traces. So you're better replacing these caps before they do that, because everywhere there's a cap, like here, the electrolyte will leak out and then rot all these traces and cause way much more work. The PlayStation 1, no, so this is a modded one. If I pull it up on screen at the minute, you can see it's just plain Tales of Destiny there. So that is, in fact, let me just move that off screen a minute. If you open it up, you can see we've got an X station in there. So we've got an SD card, maxed out 1.5 terabyte. We've got a HDMI on the back, a high speedo, and we've just got a DC USB mod until I make one myself. And then if we power it on, we obviously get the HDMI output, and we'll get X station booting up. And I haven't listed them yet, so I've got to work out the price, but I always do them as cheap as possible. But obviously you have to bear in mind the HDMI costs money, plus the labour time is intensive. The power board, if you don't want stock, will be a bit more. The X station, the 1.5 terabyte SD. So I'm going to guess around the 300, 400 mark for a maxed out one. But I'll list them on the website probably today or tomorrow. See, we've got all the European games, everything in order. So the only one I'm going to play is Resident Evil. If we go back up, you can see we've got translations. So we've got all the translations as well. Literally everything. We've got all of these ones, which are mods to the games, basically. You got the hacks as well, the hacked games, all the demo collections. So every single demo, revisions and betas. There's literally not a thing missing on here. Italian pre-patch, got Korean games, cheat dev tools, bonus discs, and extras as well. So you can come on here, go to, say, the only game we're going to play, which is Resident Evil. Scroll down, got Resident Evil 1, say, and then just boots off the X station. And I've played this quite a while, and it works flawless. I'm really impressed with it. It's something I've been wanting to do for myself for ages. And then as soon as I did it, obviously, of course, the customers brought it, so I need to do another one. Avalonia is the software I do at the minute. So it's basically like a UI framework for making Windows, Mac, all mobile desktops and website UIs, like a cross-platform. So I do training videos on them as well. But yeah, I just wanted to quickly show off that PlayStation because I thought it was so cool. And then obviously look out for it on the website, because I will definitely list them for sale in a day or two. I've had quite a few requests for a while for PS1s, and I just haven't had time to list them. And obviously still haven't listed it, but I will do very soon. More reliable PlayStation in every way. So from old PlayStations right up to PS5s, the more unstable than Xboxes for sure. Yeah, you can buy a broken PS1. I've got literally a wall in my games room. I don't know whether you saw it on one of the streams, but I've got a literal wall of PlayStation 1s and 2s. So if you wanted a PlayStation, just general condition, mainly disk drive unknown, then just let me know and I can supply you with one. So I don't know whether to do a recap on these. It's just remembering all the caps before I do. These are all 10 volters, so I'm going to take all the other 10 volters off first, and then we'll put them on before we then take off the others. This board is Neo Geo AES. We're just doing a recap for a customer, and an RGB cleanup to get the voltage levels right, and a UniBIOS upgrade as well, so a few bits. The X station replaces the disk drive, so it plays everything, but off SD card, not off disk drive, basically. Oh yeah, Digimon. I forgot about Digimon on PlayStation as well. The good thing on the X station as well, I did it by mistake just. There's obviously a button to just play a random game, so it's ace when you've got every single game on there and you want just maybe discover a new one, just tap random game and it'll literally play something random for you. Yeah, the PlayStation, we've got a send-in service. If you go to retro6.co.uk, then send-ins, then PlayStation 1, take a look on there if I've listed the X station. If not, I'll add it today, because it's pretty recent and I'm not sure whether I've added them or not, I can't remember. But I'll obviously, considering I haven't added the ready-made one yet, I'm going to guess I didn't add it for the send-in yet either. Favourite consoles for working on? To be honest, I quite like these ones. I'm doing the AESs. I had a load in one go from not having any to then buying a ton from Japan, fixing them up, learning loads. I find these quite, not necessarily easy to work on. There's a lot that can go wrong, but I've got quite a lot of knowledge in them, and things like this, the recaps, they're pretty good money and they're just a long job. So if you want to sit and chill and just plod through without much thought, the recaps are quite good to do as well. Xbox originals I quite enjoy working on. Again, just I think it's anything I've sort of learned a lot about that I kind of enjoy working on. Plus the fact it's got Halo on and stuff like that, so that adds benefits to it. Yeah, the caps on these AESs as well have quite bent legs, so there's quite a lot of pulling you have to do. You just have to be careful that you've warmed up the board enough before you pull, otherwise you can remove traces, which obviously no biggie if you do. We can repair anything that goes wrong, but generally you try not to cause damage when you're doing a recap. It's one of the main things people do by mistake when they're recapping. They can tear traces, so you definitely want to try and minimise that, but the massively bent legs don't help on the AESs, and that's why I like to use hot air, because it gets the whole board warm, so you've got a bit more focus on pulling the caps out instead of trying to keep your eye on the pins. Worst I've ever been shocked. Mains voltage. I've had a 10,000 volt off an insulation tester that I brought for no reason. I had too much money than sense. Used to just buy tools, just buy all the fluke tools and FLIR tools just because I could. And I brought like an insulation tester, and it's meant to test when you're making a product and releasing to market, you've got to go through tests and stuff like that, and you need to test if the enclosure can handle, I don't know if it's for lightning strikes or just general tests, but anyway, I think I've still got it somewhere, an insulation test, and it gets up to like 10,000-14,000 volts, and of course I had to touch it, see what it was like, and it about as painful as a Game Gear backlight when it's not connected, I'd say. I've had plenty of shocks rewiring electrics. If you can't be bothered to turn the mains off and you think you're not going to touch the live and then you accidentally do, get belts there. So yeah, I've had quite a few quite a few shocks, to be honest. It's probably why the hair's spiky. Thanks, Tobias. Glad you like the new haircut. It's pretty much the same one I get every few weeks now. I tend to keep it pretty much the same. It's just it grows out quite a bit and I never get around to actually getting it done. That's all the tins there. We've got one over here, and then we'll put some caps on before taking some more off. This hot air is just a quick hot air station. I've got a Walla one as well, but to be honest, I find the quick as good as the really expensive ones. Yeah, I didn't have a Neo Geo growing up. I've literally got into these since starting retro, but the games and the console are crazy. You want the console, an arcade stick and one game, you're talking £1,000. And then every new game is like £200. So you just have to treat it like an investment, and each game you buy you treat like your do a bit of research first to make sure you're going to want to play it. Yeah, I think I've only ever had one shock where I struggled to let go, and it was actually wiring a light socket or a mains plug in my bedroom at my parents' house when I lived with them. And even though my dad's an electrician and I know exactly what I should be doing, I just couldn't be bothered to turn the mains off, and I kept trying to rewire it and getting zapped, but then ignoring it, doing it again, getting zapped again. And I think by the time I got zapped about 3 times, I started to cramp up that much. I thought I better turn the switch off because, yeah, it's not something you should be playing around with. You can see how much longer this cap takes at the edge of the board where we haven't warmed up as well. Probably should have done this one while I was over in this area. And then what I do on the other side, let me see if I can kind of show this because you're not really seeing it at the minute, but where is it? It's here. So let me pull focus a minute, see if we can get this on camera. What I try to do, or what I'm looking for, so it's around here, so keep your eye here. What I do is I warm up, and underneath I wiggle, and what I'm looking for is the legs of the cap to start wiggling before I kind of pull. I'm just like wiggling left and right, and once you see the legs of the cap, you know which ones they are. If you're not quite sure, you just heat up the general area, and as you wiggle, you'll start to see them move. So we know where the cap is. So nothing yet. It's kind of hard to do at this angle as well, holding these pliers and the board up. So there we go. So now see them 2 pins wiggling? So see that wiggle there? Those are the legs of the cap. So what I do is make sure I can wiggle them all around first, which they're nice and fluid. And then once I'm happy they're wiggling, that's when I can pull out without knowing that I'm not going to damage a trace, because I've seen the legs moving freely left and right before I pull the cap out. That's kind of what I'm doing, if you're wondering why I'm sort of wiggling stuff around. And then let's just see if I've made any damage to the board, because like I say, sometimes you can. And obviously if we have, we can fix anything we've done. But let's just take a look around the area. Normally it's on the back if you're going to popcorn something. So those traces look good. We're just looking at where we've removed the caps. They look good. There's one over here somewhere. That's the one we've just removed. And go a bit closer as well if we wanted to, but I can't see any torn traces there. So they look good from that side. Let's flip the board over. And we're looking in this rough area, so it can be difficult to find your way around underneath, but you can see this is likely where caps have come out. So you can see that the legs are missing, but the solder's there, like one here. And it doesn't look like we've pulled any traces. And it doesn't look like there's any popcorning. So that would be, say we popcorn the board now, you'd see sort of a bubble here, a circle of lighter green where it expands. So no damage so far, which is good, because that's what we aim for. We don't want to see any damage, it's just, it can happen. I'm going to put him back on him so he's not flapping around. I use a heat gun personally just for quickness as well. So it can be easier, but it can also be a lot quicker. So we just removed all them caps, and you don't have to heat up specific pins. You can heat the underside of the board, and you have a bit more control and time to work, whereas soldering irons touching the board can damage traces, rip traces. It's kind of a non-contact, which works a lot better. And then for all these caps, they're all 10 microfarad, so we can replace these with ceramics. So I'm going to chuck a few on the desk. And then what we'll do, see if I can get a good angle to work on here. I'll put a new tip on the iron as well. So we want to. The only problem with the overhead is it's a little bit far away than where I'd naturally work. I want to maybe move this overhead camera a bit closer to me. I'll probably do that next week. We might as well get this fan on. Extractor fan while we do this. Consoles in higher demand. Let me look, 'cause we're selling quite a few at the minute. Like ready-made consoles, we've got quite a lot of them. Let's have a look on my system. So we have in 4 SP consoles. Turn that off a second. Only 2 Game Gears left because 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 Game Gears left because we're building them all the time. An Amiga 1200, 4 PlayStation 2s, 2 Sega Saturns, which we rarely sell, an Xbox original, which we normally sell more of, 4 Dreamcast, 12, 13, 14, tons of Game Boys, but that's normal. That's all the send-ins. And then repairs, we've got SNES game batteries, SNES consoles, Sega Saturns, 3 PC Engines. This is the only Neo Geo we've got in at the minute, which is not usual. We usually have quite a few. 2 Mega Drive 2s, 2 Atari Lynxes, tons of game swaps. Oh, wow, loads. Amiga 500s, 1, 2, 3, tons of Game Boys, again, every version, SPs, GBA, GBC, 17 Game Gear repairs, 2 Atari Jags, and I've just done one, I believe, so that would have been 3, a Mega CD, 3 N64s, 2 PC Engines, a PlayStation 1, 3 Xbox Originals, and a partridge in a pear tree. So that's basically the majority of what we've got in at the minute. I'd say we're seeing a lot more desktops at the minute. That's something that we weren't doing many of. We were doing handhelds. We seem to be seeing quite a lot of desktop builds, like full builds now. I think it's because we're offering a bit more. We're offering like the game packages and things, so we get a bit more orders from them. So for this is where, again, you could also use hot air here. So to be honest, I probably will, because if you look at the footprint size of this and the pads of this, you're not really going to get your soldering iron in there very well. So what we'll do is get the hot air. If you're going to do hot air, we might as well not bother with that extractor fan now. Get a little bit of flux on the go on all these pads, and what I'll do is pre-tin the pads with solder. We will want to definitely use the iron on a few because they're by plastic. So as we come over to here, I've made this mistake before in a Neo Geo. I hot aired these, even aiming away, and I bowed this plastic here, the slider for the volume, and I had to use one of mine as a donor. So I won't be making that mistake again, because that was something that, even though I was keeping the hot air away from the top of the volume slider, actually, this plastic almost touches the board underneath. So what happened is the board got hot, even though I was aiming over here, and then this plastic melted. So it's just sometimes things like that happen, and as you work on consoles, you'll realise common mistakes and then stop making them. And that was one of the first few recaps I did years ago, where I didn't ever have that issue before. I'd never really done hot air recapping on the Neo Geos back then. And then once I'd made that mistake, like I say, you certainly remember your mistakes more than you do the things that go right. That's all then pre-tinned. And now we're going to hot air these on. And the only thing we have to bear in mind around here is power switch over here and the front of the board. So I'm going to aim my air this way, and then we're pretty safe. We don't have to keep thinking about what we're doing, and especially when I'm trying to look on the live stream as well. I have a bit less attention when I'm doing these live streams than if I was focusing, so the pre-planning definitely helps. So we'll warm this up till the solder starts melting. And then we'll go in with the cap. And you see the cap will just naturally pull into those pads. And then you just wait, because that'll still be liquidous there. And instead of waiting for that one, you can move on to the next. And we'll go to this one. And the more you do, you'll find the board already being warm it will help you work faster. So you can fly through these much quicker as well. There's that one. Yeah, we sell Xbox bodied with everything. If you select well, I say we do. If you select the 4TB option, you get everything. So every game ever released, all the tools on there, DVD to HDD is what you're after. That lets you put games in and rip them to your hard drive. Or you could just order like the 128 gig and leave a note on the order to install. If you've picked a BIOS and a new hard drive, you can leave a note to say, install DVD to HDD, and I'll chuck that on there for you. That's no problem. I'm going to chuck some I say royalty-free music. I'll try and just put some up as well, because we've got a long way to go with this recap. If anyone knows any good music we can play on streams as well, because YouTube is a pain to pull down if you've got any music. The only one I know of is Streambeats. Like, not the Streambeats website if you search, but a guy that actually made something called Streambeats, and it's like a royalty-free library with audio on. That's the only thing I know we can play on stream at the minute. So I don't know whether this is can't hear anything. LG, let me see if I can get this coming through. Or is it just that quiet? Yeah, it's just quiet at the minute. Skip that one. Yes, it's just like nothing. This music, you can't really hear much. But get a bit of Summit on. I prefer no music. I'll just have to hum to myself. I'll pause that. Mixcloud, I'll have to give that a go. I've not really tried. And like I say, I guess what are people? Nearly hot aired onto the bit I said I don't hot air onto. This is the only one I'll do far away. These four I'm going to do with an iron. What's people's preferences on music? It sounds like most people, to be honest, don't want the music. I guess, like you say, you can listen to your own stuff, and I guess you can actually hear what I'm saying then as well. I could put headphones in, I guess, as well. Put one earphone in and listen to some music. It's that one, right? Iron time. Got loads of messages I've missed while I was doing stuff. Nice. Been practicing painting. That's cool. Glad you're liking the content, Rocky. Yeah, it seems like most people prefer no music, so I'll just chuck some headphones in when I come to, if I want to listen to music. About the only time I do is normally on long recaps, because it's just a very long, laborious task of not using your brain, basically. So you kind of just can sit and listen to music instead of nothing. But I guess on stream you're more chatting on stream than, you're not really sitting there doing nothing. We've got something going on, and I don't think I need any more distraction, to be honest, when I'm doing this. It's can be distracting enough doing the chatting on stream. And you'll see I'm not really that fussed about the positions of these caps. You see, I just kind of tap them in, and then once you warm up both pads, once you're fast enough to get both pads warmed up, they just pull into position naturally. So that's why you'll see me just kind of blobbing them down like this, not really paying that much attention to the position. Get it tacked in one spot, go the other side, plenty of solder, and then once you go back and forward, it just pulls into position. Reflow the board in a microwave. All I can think is putting something in a conventional microwave, but I'm guessing you're referring to like a hot air reflow station. You can do, but you wouldn't do it for this kind of work. This is just obviously recapping individual components. We don't really need to reflow the whole board either. It's not something we need to do. My music preference, I normally listen, to be honest, to like acoustic and a cappella stuff, just like, or piano, just not necessarily that much music. Or if I'm not really paying attention because it's distracting, something like Eminem, go like to rap. But usually if I'm working, I'll just put like, acoustic on. It's my main thing I like to listen to. But I don't really listen to music that much, like rarely, to be honest. Alright, so we'll do these two now, which are 470/16s. So actually, we'll probably put them on as originals as well. So 470/16. We sell the cap kits as well, but ironically, the cap kits I sell at the minute are all through-hole components. We do plan to release surface mount combinations like what I personally recap with. But for now, the kits we sell are all through-hole, so you'd have to use them for all of them. And then on this, it's easier to do one leg at a time, to be honest. There's also glue on these caps here, so you just want to take your time. This is probably one, because of it being on the close to that plastic, I'll probably take a trace out doing this one. It's me, probably one of the main ones I find the traces come away with. So yeah, there's all glue there. One other. There to there. Is it that pin? Yeah, that one. Sometimes it's hard to see which pin it even is for the cap. Let's grab him. We're going to think as well with the iron, because it's warm when it's on the underside, but if you look, by the time it gets to the front side, it's already cooled down, so this is now would be floating in midair. And I think that's why when you use a soldering iron to remove them, you can easily tear traces, because the iron doesn't penetrate all the way through the board. So the top side is where you'll tend to pull traces out. So let's see if I managed to do that without tearing traces. I've got a feeling I'll have torn one on that one. I'm going to guess this one, but we never know. Let's clear this glue off first. So a good way I find to get glue off as well is to warm it up with hot air and then let it cool down just to the point where it's still soft. So again, we want to be careful of the plastic here, but it's not going to need much heat. Tend to just warm the glue up like that, so it's transparent, and then you just kind of wait until it starts firming up. And once it starts firming up, you tend to find just as it's solidifying is when you can kind of roll it up out the way. That's when it has its least adhesion. So it's getting there now, nearly. Still a little bit runny. Still A little bit runny. So now at this point where it's starting to get goopy and just hold its form, what we have. I just solder. Thought we got a component in there. Looks like we got a component in there, but it isn't one. Yeah, so we still got. I cut the legs off this one in case I was about to tear traces because I know this is a common one. So we've still got a leg there we need to get out as well. That one looks good though, so it doesn't look like we've caught any traces, but we do need to try and clear up this glue so we can get the new caps in. I doubt you'll get addicted to smelling lead. You'll go loopy before you get addicted. It's not a smell that's addicting. The only thing lead will do is make you lose your marbles, so you makes you not capable of processing things in your brain. It basically affects your brain. But from what I read up on lead poisoning before, it's pretty much as soon as you stop inhaling or digesting lead, your body can process it, your kidneys can filter it out. It's just if it's a build-up that then it can affect your mind, basically. But I don't think it's addictive. There's nothing addictive about it that I know. Let's try a little bit of IPA on this now. This is alright mess. It normally cleans up a bit easier than this. There we go. So IPA is getting the last little bit of it, I think. I think we have got a pad. Well, I say we've got a pad missing. It's a pad that isn't really a pad as well. So on this here, you can see there's actually no pad over that. It's come off when we've lifted off the top, but the connection's on the other side of the board. So they're actually, the pad that's come off, the ring on the via, doesn't actually go anywhere. So that is a lifted pad in one way, but it's not actually lifted any connection, if you know what I mean. So that's like a no problem and nothing you'd actually do. There's no point restoring the pad at the top because it goes nowhere. I don't know why I'm clearing the glue up here. It's not in the way anyway. Just making even more of a mess at the minute. Right, so now we want to clear them holes so we can get the new caps through, because these are going to be the through hole ones. There's a little leg left on here because this is the cap I cut. So that's him out. That one, I think the same's happened on here. So I think the two holes on the top here, two legs, they're technically missing the pads. So see this one here. Seems a little bit out of focus as well. There, so see the little brown ring there. That's a trace in a sense. It's the circle of the via that's missing, but it goes nowhere on the side, and the same for that. So that's why they've lifted out, because they've literally got no connection. The connections are, if we flip them over, the other side of the board, and you can see it has actually taken the via, so we'll attach to this trace. So we have actually got the via there, which is this right one, the one I didn't think we'd do. That trace has effectively come with the capacitor, so we'll fix that one up. But like I say, you try to avoid it as much as you can, but there's no major issue with that. You can obviously, as long as you know what you're doing and you know you've done it, you can make sure the cap goes to the right place. And then I'll show you a trick on, if we struggle to clear any vias, I'll show you a little trick I do, because it's not always that easy to clear holes. You can find that no matter how much you use desolder wick and things, you could be there forever and the holes just don't seem to clear. So the first thing you want to make sure is you've got good wick and a lot of heat on your iron. And I haven't as such, because I'm not actually using that higher quality solder wick. I'm trying to use up the slightly less quality solder wick, which is this mechanic. So you want goot wick if you want the best quality. But short of that, you can heat up the board with hot air. And then a final trick is I just use a fine needle and poke through the desolder wick through the hole, so that you're pushing some of the strands of the wick into the hole to wick the solder out of the hole, basically. Or you could obviously use a desolder pump and hot air, but this is an area we're trying to avoid using the hot air because of the plastic. There we go. So have we got clear holes? Just about. I think we can just about get the caps through there, and then we'll just make sure on the other side of the board all of the traces are, or the caps are going to where they should be. And then also make sure the caps go in the right way, because these ones are polarized. So if we looked at the board on here, you can see the little plus next to the circle, and on here that little plus there, so it means the positive's this way. So for this one, on the cap, you can see the stripe on aluminium caps is the negative, so the long leg is the positive, and so the long leg wants to go through where the plus is. So the long leg goes through that way, and then the other one through there. And we push it through, bend the legs over. And now if we look down here, this is where we need to make sure, because we've definitely got them traces that we need to fix. Luckily they're quite easy, so you can see on here really, it's the rings of the vias that have come loose with the cap. So this doesn't have a ring, so we need to solder to this trace. This ring's basically gone, we need to solder to here or here. So this, for example, we can just bend in a shape and solder to here. This we can bend to here. This is attached, but we could bend it to there just for good measure if we wanted. And the same with this here. So that's what you can do to recover the traces. We can just say, bend this one over like this, onto there. And this is why you try to avoid doing damage like this. You don't want to be patching up the board everywhere, but like I say, sometimes it's unavoidable. And I also knew almost that these ones were going to do it because it's semi-common. Specific caps on specific boards I know have weaker vias, and you can't use the hot air due to the plastic. So it's like the risk of you're better doing a little bit of damage to a trace than you are melting plastic, because the plastic's something you can't replace, whereas a trace you can fix nice and easy. Clean the board first in what way? It's generally clean. What we'll do once we've finished working on it, as we chuck it in the dishwasher, to fully clear the board, and then spray it down with IPA to remove any contaminants from it being washed, and it'll be the cleanest board you've seen. Then it's like almost factory. If the boards are anything specifically dirty, or the customer pays for like deep internal cleans, then we obviously can do cleaning, but I don't spend the time cleaning stuff I don't have to. And then the final one will go across. And I just like to follow the traces. No specific reason. It's just like to follow them there. And then that's them traces restored. So I think we're good, and hopefully, I think that's the only place that typically does have issues on this board. I don't think there's many places we have issues. So we've recapped there, done all there. We've missed one over here, so we just need to do the one over here. That one we removed last. Let's bring that into focus again. I definitely want to figure out an auto focus solution that doesn't cost too much for this. And then here we can do hot air. There's nothing too close that we can't hot air here, so grab the hot air out. Grab the 10 microfarad cap. And then that should pull into position. There we go, so that's them done. And a lot of the work is all in this area. So you'll find you spend tons of time down here, that's why I'm doing it first. And then you've got your big power caps over here, which take time because, again, getting them off safely, not melting the power switch, which is another thing you can do, exactly the same principle. The power switch, when you're warming up here, can get hot enough to melt the plastic on the other side of the board. So there's just, this area is probably 80% of the work. Once we get down to here, we're actually going to remove nearly all these caps anyway, because we're doing the RGB mod and they won't be needed. So there's only 4 caps here that are needed. And I think all 5 of these, maybe one's left. But 4 of them are RGB and C-Sync are removed. I think 1 is composite, so I think 1 stays, but these 4 definitely go. So we're not that far off, even though it looks like we've only done a quarter of the board. We've probably done 80% of the board here. Anything good? Oh, definitely. I've watched $1 Million Secret. That was really good. Enjoyed that. Basically going in a mansion. I think it was like 12 people. They have a box each, and they go back to the room, and one of the 12, it's got $1 million in. And the whole idea is like the millionaire has to complete tasks and stay discreet about it, like dropping in conversations like song lyrics like Don't Stop Believing and stuff like that, and then all the other people have to guess who the millionaire is and vote them out, and it's pretty good. And then we just started watching another one that's not as good, but like something along, a similar lines. I've only watched 1 episode. Trying to think what it's even called. I'm not quite sure. I'd have to probably tell you that on the next stream. I can't actually think what the other one's called. We watched 1 episode the other day. The mod, in terms of the RGB mod up here, it's going to improve the video out to make the voltage levels right. The universal BIOS over here just adds enhancements, basically, to the original BIOS. Right, so this one we need to hot air out this giant cap. And if I remember rightly, this one is quite a pain. Which ones aren't on the Neo Geo? But I'm pretty sure we hot air this one out, no problem. I'll probably hot air out. Yeah, that's the other thing as well. These reset buttons can melt as well. So this one will iron out. This one's far enough away, so I'm going to do this one and this one with hot air, and the other one that's remaining we will do with the iron. We're working on a Neo Geo at the minute. It's a working console. We repaired it yesterday, I think it was. But the customer's paid now for the capacitors to be replaced, so they're nice and new. And we're then doing a UniBIOS upgrade, and then outputting the RGB, so the visual on the screen, we're fixing the voltage levels so the colours are perfect. So we're probably about just over halfway through the recap at the minute. That one is 470, and considering we're actually going to replace that with one. Let's try. What have we got here? Positive on the inner leg. Let's see if we can just do a hot swap on this. So if we just keep the board warm, let's try and just poke the cap through, see if we solder it. Saves a few minutes of work at most. Or you just melt your fingers with the hot air, one or the other. Right, so that's through that hole. That's through there. Perfect. Ooh, hot. So that saves us having to desolder them holes. We probably didn't get the best view of that, but you can trust me, that worked ace. So now we'll just freshen up them legs. And now we have a nice quality new cap straight through the holes there without having to solder wick. So you can see there, that's the new cap now. And we managed to basically keep the pads warm and just poke the new cap straight through that hole without having to you know, clean up the holes and then reflow. It's just a little bit of a cheat to save a little bit of time. Ah, yeah, definitely the £3 double burgers ace. It's all adds up, especially when you buy them for 4 people. You know, you can have a £50 Mackey's bill, or you can have a £15 Mackey's bill. It definitely works out well. This giant one, we might be able to do the same with. Let's have a go. And we want to aim this way away from the power switch. That's the main thing we're trying to avoid here. Tweezers, I don't know if I've got any spare. It's ones we've had made. I used to have them made years and years and years ago for us. I think you can get pretty much identical ones, but now instead of the ones I made, I use these Mechanic KS11s, I think they are. And these are just a bit firmer, so the tips don't bend as easy. They're not as pointy, but they are stronger, so you might want to try them just at AliExpress for like £2. I'd give them a go first. I'm going to do a combination on this big one as well. I'm going to warm the board up and then I'm going to get the iron on it, to be honest, because this is making contact with the board. So I don't really want to apply too much hot air because the surface area of that cap is going to be getting quite warm as well. Right, so that's got most of it out the way, and then back to hot air because now it's hovering through the board, so the iron is no longer warming that solder. Oh yeah, we used to pack them. We got in trouble with Royal Mail years ago. We used to pack them in, you know, just the plastic bags, like the really cheap Chinese thin bags. If you buy off AliExpress, you just get like a wafer thin piece of plastic. We used to just chuck the tweezers in there. They didn't even have the protective ends on at the time because we were just making thousands and selling them on eBay for like £2. So all the Royal Mail workers in Stoke were getting stabbed with our tweezers all the time. So they literally give us a warning that we need to, you know, package them safer because we were selling probably, I think 200 a day was nuts. We used to get through a tub full of 1,000 tweezers every week. I don't know why they were so popular, but they're not that popular anymore, unfortunately. Let's mix this one up then. Let's also, I reckon, desolder pump this hole. Why not use every technique while we're doing it? Definitely need to move this this camera position. I have to move the board miles out the way of where I normally work when I do the overhead. So the other way of cleaning the holes, especially these ones, because they're thermally quite absorbent, I'm going to use hot air and a desolder pump. And that's that cleared. brand new one. There we go. So the perfect way to do most of these as well, if you're using this one, because look at the height difference. Well, I say look at the height difference. I've got the camera set up the wrong angle. Try and show you on this one. The height difference in that cap's not massive, but it could be enough that you know, it hits the shell. I don't think it does because that inductor's the same height, and I can't remember. It's been probably a month or two since I did a recap. I'm half tempted to lay that down, but I'll tell you what, before we solder it, instead of doing that, let's just actually try it in the shell, see if it does hit anything. I can't remember. Something in the back of my mind's telling me that hits something on the shell, and then we'll have to desolder it to bend it. There we go. Front one. Yep, I'm right. That touches the shell. So I knew there was something about that one I could remember vaguely. So what we want to do with that one is just pull the legs out slightly, and we'll lay it down just enough. You can pull it out quite a lot and lay it over the top of the regulator if you want like that, but you don't want the heat. So we'll probably pull it down and just push it to the side, or you know, you can twist it to this side, wherever you feel looks okay. I think there's okay, and the legs are fine. So we'll solder him in there. Oh yeah, I wouldn't buy branded stuff off AliExpress. I'd stick to things that are specifically Chinese brands for that reason, so that you're getting, you know, if you get something that's meant to be, say like a JVC iron, if you buy a JVC iron off AliExpress, you're more than likely to not get one. Whereas if you buy the clone one, like the I2C, then you're much more likely to get the actual I2C that's actually as good as, well, not quite as good as, but you know, not far off. So I'd just stick with purposefully rebranded products. It also helps to know if you know certain factories as well. Then if you know the right factories, you're going to get good deals, and you can work with them. And if you put enough money through them, like now I put that much money through with factories, I can pretty much get a guarantee that when I order something and I say it needs to be a certain quality or it needs to be real, they know that that's what I mean, and you know, they won't screw you over because you've got future business with them. So luckily I've been dealing with Chinese factories for 15 plus years, and they get probably 20 to 30,000 a month off me in products and things. So they're not going to screw me over and sell me fake stuff for make a little bit of money, because they know they're making enough money if they sell me good stuff at good prices, and they'll know I'll sell a ton of them. So it all helps, basically. We've got the contacts like anything else. It'll help. Which pins are these? I think they're them pins, actually. Yeah, them pins. There we go. I always hate taking caps out with soldering iron. I'm so used to doing it with hot air. I just don't like. I'm going to hot air it. I'm going to risk the button because I have spares. I'm going to aim away from the button. I just don't like removing caps with irons. You're not penetrating the board to liquefy the solder on the top level. That's the main reason you end up pulling traces. Better. And this is right in that area where we had the trace damage. So let's see if these traces are bad, because obviously they're in an already delicate area. We might already have some issues with traces here. Hopefully we won't, but if anywhere's going to be bad like the other one, I'd say it's going to be this area. So no, that looks okay. Just check the other side where I've just hot aired off, which is here. Yeah, that's all fine. So I half expected that one to be a problem for us, because like I say, that's right in the area where we've had that trace damage. You know, the trace damage is there, so we've already got weak traces here. So I am surprised that one was okay. So let's try and solder a 10 microfarad into here. And again, we're definitely soldering from this side because of the reset switch right here. There we go, it's pulled into place. And now on to, we've done that one, we've done the power, we've done all of this side of the board. So we are literally dealing with now the top end, which is nothing. There's 4 caps we can hot air off. And let's see if we can get some kind of view so you can see something other than just staring at nothing. Let's use this and zoom in to probably this area here. And at least you can see something better than nothing. Right, so these 4 we're going to remove and replace with ceramics. These 4 are, I'm pretty sure, RGB and C-Sync. We'll have to just double check where they go. So those are just going to get removed and bridged. And this one, I think, is composite. I might be wrong, or if nothing else, but we'll check the schematics because memory fails me on them. I haven't done it in a little while. But this is nearly the recap done. Oh, and just obviously be careful of, you know, there's a plastic connector here we don't want to melt. Actually, what we'll do is hot air these off, and then we'll just cut those 4 off. They're floating in midair and they're going to be bridged. So I'm actually going to just cut them off to save the hassle of potentially damaging this. So we're just hot airing the underside of the board for now. It takes a little while to warm up, and then they should all pretty much come out at the same time. I think this might be a 4-layer board again, I can't fully remember. So when we're warming this board up, it's kind of spreading the heat evenly across all the caps. So by the time one comes out, you'll probably find most of them come out. Sometimes these as well, these little inductors here, sometimes they fracture. It's rare, but that's something just to watch out for. And if they do, again, we can replace them. It's not a big problem. Yeah, Sunday, it's I go away for a few days, so I'm just trying to keep on top of things as well. I'll be having next weekend off in a couple of days, so probably like the Monday, Tuesday, so just doing a bit extra to stay on top. Plus I do like the work anyway, it's something I enjoy, so if I'm in the mood, sometimes I prefer working than sitting watching TV because I just like to engage my brain. You can see that one's getting a bit loose now. See how it's a little bit wobbly. So we're not far off, so I'll move the heat back to the top. That's solid, solid. That one's definitely probably one of the first that's going to come out. And just bear in mind, they've got the bent legs underneath, so you feel like you're pulling them out, but you may not be. It's all about knowing the time. But that one's come out clean. That was the 100 and the rest are 10s. See if I can get my hand this side so you can actually see what I'm doing. And now all the rest shouldn't be far off. The fact that one come out, the board's not going to be that far off heated for removing them all. So as long as you don't pull too firm, then you shouldn't pull traces. And it's like I say, it's one of them boards that's hard to judge because the legs are so bent on the other side. They don't just lift out. They're not going to just like pull out when they're ready like most caps do. They're going to feel like they're stuck, until you sort of bend them legs out. So it's a bit awkward to try and get right. And you can always come and hot air from the top, but you risk blowing the caps up. So if you're brave, you can do this and apply heat directly to the caps. It'll come off a lot faster, but you might explode one. So let's see if we get a cap exploding on live stream, I guess, which we may well do. And the bigger the cap, the bigger the pop. That one's come out clean. So you don't want to be doing this on 470 microfarad caps to go with a nice bang. There we go, so I think we've done all them okay. Yep, so now we can do the last one. We've got 3 10s and 100. It's actually written on the board, so we don't need to guess that. And we might as well, while the board in this general area is warm, we can try and get this cap off. So we'll try and get this one off here. I'm just going to go from, I think I've knocked something on the floor as well, just going to go from the top on this one. If you want to remove them from the top, what you tend to do is put the hot air around the cap, not on the cap, for a good while, and then when you think it's ready to remove, you can go on the underside of the cap like this. But you may get the cap exploding, so try and move your face out of the firing line if it does pop. All it'll do is make a little bit of a pop and then hiss, and your room will stink of electrolyte. Or if you're lucky, you won't actually pop the cap. Depends for live streaming, it all depends on what I'm working on. I only tend to work on ones that really require me, or ones that are getting older. Sometimes it's whether they're just interesting for live stream, but we have that many consoles in, we can't live stream them all. Clock cap is pretty simple as well. You're just basically removing a cap. Basically doing this just for one cap though, not about 40 that we've done here. I've got a feeling this one's going to go pop. I'll move my head out of the way. And again, I'm not tugging because I don't want to tear traces, so I'm just wiggling gently until I feel like, there you go. You missed that with my hand, but see all that poof of smoke then? That's basically the cap popping. And you can see how it's exploded out of its case. So the black plastic has kind of popped up there. So I'll show you on the close-up. And that's because I've hot aired it from the top completely and not gone from underneath. So you see how the cap's basically popped out of its case there. And this is just a coil. So this is all just wrapped around this black carbony stuff. That'll be wrapped around over and over, and the electrolyte was in between all those rolls, which is a liquid, and that's what expanded and popped out and went everywhere basically. So that's a 10-1. And trace looks good, that's the main thing. One sec. What we're repairing, it's a working Neo Geo. We're just doing a recap on it. So we're replacing the capacitors for new ones. and we are just on pretty much. I think we've removed all the ones we need to remove now. We just need to put them back on. So this one can have a 10 microfarad ceramic on now. Oh yeah, the recaps are definitely something that people definitely struggle with, even people that do it for a living. Well, you can see we've torn traces on 2 down, 1 corner. And that's mainly just because of, we wouldn't tear traces on here if it wasn't for the plastic. The fact we have to use an iron is the reason these two end up being a problem, because we don't want to melt these 3 plastics. But even if you're experienced, you can tear them. If you're not, you almost always do that same kind of mistake. You'll use an iron from the bottom, the heat will be on the bottom, and as the cap starts lifting, the traces on the top cool down because the legs of the caps are no longer in the holes, so the solder cools down, and then you end up tearing traces. So it's nothing to be ashamed of. It's one of them things that takes a lot of experience to do without any damage. And unfortunately, most people, when they come to do it, it's their first thing they try, and then they completely mess up the board. And half the time, the consoles don't even need the recap. It's just preventative maintenance before there is a problem. So it's kind of a double wounder where people have taken a working console and actually broken it when it was already working, so they feel even worse. You can see these were covered in glue as well, so get some of that out. Those 4 caps we're not going to put back on. They're the RGB stuff we'll come to. But the other ones we need to put a few caps on. This is the state where I was saying with the glue, when it's at the perfect state to get off, because it loses its kind of adhesion just when it's starting to set. You see how that just pretty much rolls up. This is what the other one should have done, just comes off in nice clumps. I think there was just too much around the other glue, too many components, so it was just all stuck to it. But yeah, that comes off nice and easy. Get rid of these caps. Rusty is sleeping. I don't know, I've got a photo. He's sleeping with Manda at the minute. He's gone for an afternoon snooze. Yeah, so he's there, sitting on Manda's knee. So I won't disturb him yet. I keep promising I'll bring him in on stream, but he keeps disappearing. And there he was. I think that was this morning. That's his favourite spot when I'm doing software. Just sits in between my legs and chills down there. He'll probably come in and then barking at us for food, but we'll see. Stressful work? No, this one isn't really. I enjoy these ones. Quite enjoy the Neo Geo repairs. They're pretty simple. It certainly was stressful when I used to do them, but I kind of know and expect what can go wrong on these and what typically goes wrong. Like I know certain traces, like down here, I knew we were going to mess traces up almost all the time, but we know what to do to fix them. And then I know what to watch out for, like, not melting this button when you're swapping this cap. So, and then plus if anything goes wrong, I'm confident in these that I'm pretty good at fixing them. So it's not really a big problem for me. Favorite console to repair? I think I mentioned that earlier. It's probably these aren't far off. I'd say these and Xbox originals at the minute I quite enjoy. But I've just built myself a PlayStation 1 maxed out, which I didn't expect to enjoy building, just because I haven't done them yet. So, when you don't have experience with something, it's always a bit more stressful, but I actually quite enjoyed the build. And then that's already sold to a customer, so I've got to build myself another now. So PlayStation 1s seem pretty easy to repair. well, to mod as well. At least the one I did was, it was fairly pain-free. Oh, this cap's just, why am I doing this with an iron anyway? Just clicked in. Hot air, just want to get that nice and straight. There we go. So we've got 100 there, the others are 10. I think somebody asked as well what brand of caps we used, funnily enough. I forgot to answer that one. Always use high quality ones. For ceramics, I tend to like the Samsung ones. So I've got a bag full of Samsung caps here. I just literally print a label, pull them all out of the reel, dump them in a big bag so I can grab them nice and easy. But there's tons of high quality brands these days. There's something like Etch, I forget the names exactly, but something like Etchy something or other. There's I could pull up the cap kits, take a look at what brands are in the cap kits, because I think there's Alna as well as one of them off the top of my head. Let me just have a quick look at the caps. I think the Sega Saturn's got a good few brands in. Let me have a look at that one. Yeah, so we tend to use Panasonic, Rubicon, Nichicon, Nippon, Alna. They're the ones, they're all the bulk of the aluminium caps. Then for ceramics, like I say, I tend to use Samsung's. I also did try, I know a few of you guys were on the streams, you know, semi-regular. I mentioned about trying this, using this side cam. Oh, it zoomed into hell here from the last one. Let's just zoom out. So this kind of side cam, the fact I can use this remote and move it around and get a nice position and stuff. I wanted to try and do that for the overhead. So I moved this camera above and did a side-by-side with the Blackmagic camera, but it was absolutely nowhere near. So you can't beat this level of detail. Like we see you know, this isn't a microscope. This is literally an overhead camera, and it's that detailed. It's crazy. So I don't think we're going to beat that. The one thing I just want to do is try and get the autofocus. I was looking at I've got two options. One is swapping that overhead studio cam for either buying a Blackmagic 6K Pro, because I've got a Blackmagic 6, I think I've got a Blackmagic 4K, not a 6K, so it doesn't do autofocus, so that's like $1,500 maybe. Then it can do autofocus. Another option was using like a Sony Alpha or an FX, but they're about £2,500, and it's replacing the lens as well, and this lens is about a £3,000 or £4,000 lens, if not more. So I'm aiming towards just wasting more money on a studio cam or a Blackmagic just to get that autofocus, because I can now zoom. I don't know why I'm lifting up and down as well. I forgot I've got this zoom at the side of me. I keep forgetting I've got that. So I've wired that in for zoom. It's just the focus. So if I move the board up or down, or we're working on a different side, I have to keep lifting up. But I can't see a way around that easily, because I don't think this motorized zoom. I think it's a motorized zoom I've got. Yeah, it is. So I haven't got anything to do with the focus yet. So either the camera's got to do it for me, which is ideal, or I'd have to really open up. Yeah, I'd have to open up maybe the studio camera and do something. So I'm thinking of just maybe upgrading that to one that can do autofocus, like something that can use the EF lens and do autofocus. But my other concern is the Blackmagic camera sensors are so good. I don't really want to replace them with anything but Blackmagic because I've used so many cameras and I've got so many. Nothing beats this sharpness of Blackmagic. The level of detail, I haven't seen a single other camera come close to it. So I'm thinking Blackmagic 6K to get the autofocus. Right, that's them four. That's that. So this now should work, but we've got to... I probably should have left them on just for the test. I think I can still bridge them and test. I'm just thinking I should have left these caps on before we do the RGB mod, but it doesn't matter because, yeah, it doesn't actually matter. So let's just bridge these caps and then we'll see if we still get anything on the output without tuning it. I'm pretty sure if we use a clean RGB cable now, we'll be fine. I can just use as well, if you've got spare caps you're not going to use, like I've got a bag full of these ones I'm not going to use now. You can just use the legs off them to make quick bridges. So, bridge that. Bridge that. And then cut. And then just use the leg again. Probably get 2 out of this. Just quicker than stripping wire down. There we go. Grab another one. Yeah, COG or C0G caps we use on, funnily enough, the Atari, this thing here. So part of reconstructing the composite signal really clean, all the caps on here are COG NPO caps. For obviously, they do make a difference when you're doing like video circuits as well. I wish they'd also, if they just added support to, because I brought this lens, the overhead lens. I don't even know what it is. Let me just pull it up. It has autofocus capabilities and Blackmagic support it. But I've got an older studio, Blackmagic Studio Cam, whatever they call it, and that specific camera has outdated firmware that won't support the autofocus, so that was kind of a bit of a wounder when I brought it and then realised it's literally like 1 year older than when they added support for the autofocus part of it, which is a bit gutting. Right, let's get things tidied up a minute before we see if this boots up again. That'll be the first test. Do we actually still get boot, or have we broken anything? Hopefully we've not broken anything. It's a fairly straightforward recap. I think as well, if you're getting caps in ones, then yeah, they're crazy. If you're buying them in like 1,000, they're not too bad. They're not that much dearer. But yeah, singles, and especially things like DigiKey, they overcharge massive compared to what you can get them for straight from factories. Right, then let's see. Move this back out the way. If we have a working system, I don't think I've forgot anything. All them caps on there, bridge them, that's on. Power circuit done. Just one last check on polarities to make sure nothing's in backwards. That's fine. Well, the only ones that matter are incorrect, so that's fine. We are doing a Neo Geo AES. You're about to see it power on and hopefully work, unless I've screwed something up. So we fixed it yesterday. There was some trace damage down here, so we had this trace. This was ultimately the problem. We just had to diagnose it and fix it. And then because it now works, the customer's paid to swap all the caps for ceramic, so they're not going to leak, except the larger ones, which are staying as aluminiums. which we should probably upgrade to polymers as well, so even those can't leak in the future. And now we're just going to test we haven't broken anything first. And then if we haven't, then the next step will be swapping the UniBIOS 4.4, which is just literally plugging this in. It's not a hard job. And finally, after that, we're going to tune the video output to improve them colours. And I'm going to try and get it so you can actually see the change in colour, because the HDMI capture wasn't really showing it, because it compensates for the colour a little bit and adjusts it, so you weren't really seeing the problem as much as I was seeing by eye. But I'll try and get the video capture to actually show the fault as well. Ooh, I hope the mouse is going crazy. There we go. Just dragged buttons out the way. Right, so that in there, that on. So we should see, we pop that up over there. That's the OSSC. Now, fingers crossed, if we go to channel 1 and turn on, there we go. So we get purple, which not necessarily good. We shouldn't get purple. We should get white. So maybe something else gone wrong. Let's get a game first, then. So that's possibly purple. We are missing. What's purple, red, and blue? We're missing the green channel. So we've either not bridged the green channel, or when we've taken them caps out, up here we've potentially not bridged something right. So let me just pull up the KeyCAD schematic. I could do this another way, but the other thing is as well, I noticed it had got a mod on the back, so maybe the wires have just come loose. There's another thing with the heat, because they, yeah, there you go. There's the issue. So it's already had a mod on the back, and that's just come off with the heat when we've been doing work. So that will be, we have blue, which is that row there. We have green, which is this row, red, which is over there. So the green is there. And we're going to gut this anyway because, well, we might not gut it, but we're going to redo that anyway. Let's see if that now works. This mouse keeps getting caught. There we go. Right, so turn on, we should be white. Well, why are we cyan now? I'll knock something else off. Let's see what we get. What have I done here now? Maybe soldered it to the wrong place or something. Oh, is the blue off as well? No. Let's have a look. C-Sync is in a fashion on. Green is correct. So blue is on there. That's on there. Oh, red's off as well. So the original mod, I'm blaming that. Just poor soldering. Third time lucky. Camera over. We should get white. There we go. And this should boot. There we go. So this should boot up normal. Let's just give it a minute to boot. And I'll catch up on these notes a minute. Xbox One X hard drive failed. Xbox One X hard drive. I'm trying to think. I haven't worked on them in a good while for the hard drive side. Yeah, that's working fine. I think it's a while since I've worked on one, but I think on the Xbox One X hard drives, you just have to use a USB. Do the whole a trick I think I used to do. I'm trying to remember what I did was remove the hard drive completely, turn it on with the recovery USB stick in. You should get to a recovery menu, and then hot plug the hard drive in while you're in the recovery menu, and then do a factory reset. But you've got to have the DVD drive plugged in as well because it does a firmware update on the DVD drive. So I'm just going to swap the BIOS, by the way, what I'm doing here. BIOS 3 with UniBIOS 4. There we go. So we should still get white screen, which we do. And then when we boot this, it'll obviously say Unibios 4 free edition or something. There you go. So Unibios 4. So that's that upgrade done. Now you can see the. Let me turn it off and on so you can see. See how the blue is quite bright or looks washed out in some way. That's basically one of the issues there. And this has already had some work done, so we need to make sure that SNK bit should be pretty much a royal blue. Almost like that was there, so the colours are way off, which is what we need to fix. This is actually over bright, not under, so that's too bright. So I'm wondering whether somebody has already changed some caps on this. So that's what we've got to fix on there. Old ZX Spectrum's worth the money like collectors. I don't know, I've got tons of Spectrums. Well, I say tons, I haven't got that many now, but I think there's almost no market for them in terms of we never seem to repair them almost ever. We never seem to sell them, even though I don't really list them at the minute. But Spectrums seem to be quite, well, not popular, basically, I think, is the thing with Spectrums. Blackmagic cams, yeah, crazy expensive. How I know all this stuff, just work on it most days, have a desire to learn things, and just dig in. So it's just many man hours of trying to learn stuff. It's literally what I enjoy. So if you don't enjoy it, you're not going to learn it. But I actually enjoy that. Right. I'm going to get a coffee first, and then we'll do this RGB thing. Let me just wrap up the comments, and I'll just go grab a coffee. Ever caps inside of games? Yeah, they don't normally fail, but like SNES games sometimes have 1, 10 or 100 microfarad cap in. It's rare though. Mega CD2, I haven't got much diagnostics on, but Mega CD1, there's a ton of info on retro6.wiki. You might want to check that out. It might have similar issues. No BIOS chip window you don't need to cover. Bear in mind, it's going to be inside of this big black box here and never see the light of day. If you've ever tried to erase these things, you know that literally you need UV light 5mm away for 20 minutes to erase this thing. It's not, daylight is not going to affect these. Like it's going to take 20 years of daylight to do any damage. If it was going to be out in daylight and literally exposed, then yes, I'd cover it. But inside of there, definitely not going to bother. So I'll just leave this on a minute. I'm just going to grab a coffee basically. So back in a second, and then we'll do the RGB. So officially the only way to drink coffee is now through an owl cup. That's the new standards. Yeah, this is live, other than the fact I just buggered off to get a coffee, but yeah, it's live. Right, where are we up to then? So we now need to do the RGB. So instead of just doing it, I'll kind of... Oh, where's my face cam gone? There we go. I'm back to tracking me. I'll kind of talk you through. Let me just get rid of this when it's in my way. Talk you through how this works, because I know it, but obviously, instead of just blindly doing the work, let's go through the schematic and show you how you'd figure this out, because a lot of you guys also want to know how you learn stuff, so I guess now is the time to explain it. Plus, I can't remember off the top of my head, so I need to look myself anyway. So we have the video signals here. The Neo Geo outputs RGB already over here, but it's not the correct voltage, basically. It's got an offset and there's problems. So I've done a ridiculous amount of work on figuring out old video signals, so like RGB, composite, all these kind of video signals. It's something I spent absolutely forever learning, and it's why I made the Atari Clean Comp as well. So if I pull up I'll just pull up the PC over the top a minute. If you went to retro6.wiki, and then in the menu you go to Video Standards, which is a topic I've done, you can read what this all says about all the different things. You know, how all those confusing modes like YPB, PR, the YOV, the RGB, how all that works. You can go back in the menu and you can go through. So you've got RGB formats, which is all the different formats. You've got sync types. So there's tons where you could get confused because there's so many options. But the Neo Geo AES is the RGB and a separate sync. So if we look down here, it's RGBS is what it's called. That's the terminology. And that just means RGB RGB are separate pins and C-Sync is its own pin. You can have, obviously, you can have RGBS referring to TTL, Sync on Luma. So even though the name RGBS, there's actually 3 different RGBSs. This is the most common, RGBS C-Sync. You can have RGSB, which is the sync on the green, and that's very common with what looks like composite, but again, component. But I say component isn't RGB because the color space is different. So if you really want to dig deep, you can read up what I've already sort of explained and figured out. But ignoring that, say we were to look at this actual system now for almost the first time and you knew a little bit about it. You can check the schematic to see where the video signals come in. So that's the first thing I'd be doing. So if we were to pull up the Neo Geo schematic, so we can pull up this schematic here, say. And this is how I learn anything new. If the schematics I sit and read through, and even if they don't make sense, say we know nothing about the RGB or the Neo Geo at all, I'm going to scroll through and look for the output port where I connect my cable. That's all I care about. And then I go and work through backwards from there. So I'll scroll through and I'll look, and at a glance, nothing stands out. I'm kind of looking for the shape of a connector. Sometimes there's a shape of a connector, sometimes there's not. So I've seen nothing there. So if we scroll back up and look again, we've obviously missed it. You can see here. So there's the connector. So this is then showing like C-Sync, video, GR, all this lot. Before I do any work on it, anytime I'm doing any new RGB, I don't think that's then enough to say, right, cool, there's the pins, but then is that the cable connector? So are we looking at sort of the cable side? Are we looking at the pins looking into this cable? Or are we looking at the pins looking into this connector? That's a big thing that loads of people miss. And then even if we do all that, I'm going to be probing on the underside of this board and looking at this connector. So I want a nice visual first where I can say, right, what does it actually look like? And if we went back to the wiki, so if I open up that wiki a minute, and if we go to here, and this is just something I've done by figuring it out, reverse engineering it, probing the pins, getting a cable that's known working, finding out for sure what pins are which. And then in the Neo Geo section under AES, I've then put the AV pin out, and I do this for most consoles. And this is another thing we do. They look like Mega Drives, but they're not because this thing is different. And then I do a visual from the back of the console, so you can see that that's the back of the console. I normally do one, obviously, holding that as well and showing you the pins of the cable, but you can just flip it around for that. And then I show you the underside of the board. So now that underside of the board will basically match. If we went over to here, we can then see at a glance, all right, so we've got 2 grounds at the top, we've got a ground here, you've got composite, then green, you can see the green's on. You can see composites, C-Sync's on C-Sync, and a trace has been cut underneath because that already links to composite, so that's been done already. But this kind of visual, so we can see at least where red, green, and blue is. That's how you find out where the pins are. But now we want to modify this, we need to know what the circuit does. So if we went back to the schematic, and say we just pull up the schematic in full, this is very common among most systems as well. You'll kind of learn this as you go. You've got an output here, so all this is the output. Those are the 4 big caps we just blanked off. So the 470, 470, 470, 470. We've bridged them because the caps aren't needed. Again, on the wiki, it'll explain it if you wanted to know why. This was the 10 microfarad I left in, and that goes across, and that was audio. So that small one we replaced was audio, that's why it was still needed. But this is the output, and you'll see these 75 ohm resistors. Part of the video standard for RGB is the final impedance, so the resistance of the final signal should be 75 ohms. And that's because the receiver has a 75 ohm resistor pulled to ground that halves the voltage. That's important later on, you'll get to that. So we're going to recreate this output, or we normally would with clean RGB, but what we want to do is tweak the voltage because the input of this comes in here, so you can kind of guess without knowing much. It says R in, G in, B in, so red, green, and blue going in. Red, green, and blue going out are slightly further over. So you can kind of see without knowing much that you've got the red, green, and blue coming out, and we've got red, green, and blue coming in. So what a lot of people do is they'll mod the board by changing these 75 ohm resistors to change the voltage. And that'll work, but the problem is you're modifying something here that makes no sense, because the reason it's 75 ohms is that when you add the 75 ohm and the 75 ohm together, you get 150 ohm, and the output has a 470 picofarad capacitor to filter out noise above 4 megahertz, and that's the signal speed of the RGB. So if you change the 75 ohm resistor, it's going to work, but the filtering, the low-pass filtering, which is what removes noise and clock noise and all kinds of visual issues, you're going to make that worse. So that is not the right thing to do to change the 75 ohm. So we can keep that 75 ohm there, but instead we can go over to the inputs here, and you can see the red, green, and blue end have a basic voltage divider. So that means the red signal is already too high, and we voltage divide it down with 6.8 and 3K. And we change these values. So if we change the 6.8K, we can change the output voltage of the system and therefore change it to be brighter or darker. So all this is learned. This is how I've learned it. And I don't know anybody that does the same way as I do. I don't think anybody changes these resistors. Maybe they do. But this is the point I picked to change them. Just replace the 6.8K with a different value. You can use an oscilloscope to see all this, but you can also see it visually on screen when we do this. So I'll show you the output as we do it. And then those resistors, if we wanted to replace them, we can find them all here. So here's that row from the schematic, 6.8K3, 6.8K3, 6.8K3. And that's the red, green, and blue caps here. So that's all we need to do ultimately. We need to change these resistors to alter the final voltage and make it brighter or darker. I've done all this that many times though. I've made, again, on the wiki, a nice helpful guide. So if we were to pull up the wiki, we can go to Neo Geo, so I've done all this work for you. We can go to, I believe it's called voltage levels, so RGB voltage levels. And then in here, I explain everything I've just explained, as well as a TLDR if you can't be bothered to listen. And then here's the 6.8K resistor table. So on here now, we literally say, right, what revision of Neo Geo is it? And based on that, what resistor do we need to change it to? So this board, if we looked at the corner over here, there we go. It's an AES 3-5. So an AES 3-5 on here wants a 5.2K resistor, and that should correct the voltage to be the right output. So that's all we have to do. And a 5.2K isn't standard. Basically a 5.3K is. So we want to just swap those resistors for 5.3K to get the correct voltage. And we might as well oscilloscope probe it as well, so you can see the difference on the scope before we do this. And also just so I can double check my work, because as I did these guides, I learned more about RGB, and I learned there was two standards of voltage. One was an IRE standard. I think I've wrote it in the documents. There's basically two standards. One's very common and one's not so common, and I might have made these resistors match the less common RGB standard. So let's see if I can find, I think it's in voltage levels. Yeah, there's two standards. RGB information is always 0.7 terminated for actual colour. And then I mentioned it's here. So there's an RS343A standard. Oh, I didn't put it on screen for you. Let's put it full so you can see. There's basically two standards. One is this. Oh, try to get it. Wow, this is not working. Oh, you can nearly see it anyway. So you've got the vertical you can't quite see, but there's something here called RS343A, which is one standard, and RS170. Now, the RS170 is a much less common standard, and that's where the voltage is slightly higher. It's like 0.3 volts higher. So that's what I'm thinking. At one time, I thought that was the standard, and it's not. The PAL standard is more common. So we're going to obviously double check that that table is right with the scope now. The oscilloscope is going to allow us to see fast-moving signals in real time. So the RGB levels are going to pulse signals out to generate pixels, and we want to see them and check the voltage levels right. So a multimeter is obviously just a static DC signal, so it's not really over time. It's just going to tell you a voltage level, whereas the oscilloscope, we're going to actually see the waveforms and see what's going on. So we're going to see what the RGB is outputting already by default, and then we're going to confirm when we do the resistor change what the voltage is. And because when you boot up by default, you get a white screen, that's perfect for us, because that's what you need to check against. You need to make sure what you're seeing on screen, there's some pure white, so you know where the extreme height is. So we've got that on, we've got this in. We can flip the board over, and we can probe. And luckily, these wires are color-coded already. So I get this on, put it over to the screen, 10 times probe, trigger, right, so we should have now, if I pull this up this way, I think is the best. Here's the signals. We zoom out, and it's important to do this test with no cable inserted. So if you have a cable inserted, the voltage is going to get halved, or it's going to get more than halved if that 75 ohm resistor isn't right. So first do your test unloaded, so unterminated, that's called. If we turn the console on, we can see the power light is on. And if we now probe, say, C-Sync, let's make sure we got a signal. You can see those pulses there now are every single frame. So what you're seeing there is every single line rather. The single dips are lines, and those long dips you're seeing coming in that at the bottom go longer, that's when the full frame, like the next frame, kicks in. If we look at the green then, for example, there's the green, and this should be a pure white screen. So if I just capture that waveform, and we pull this up on screen, what we have now is we can check the voltage level. So it's going straight to ground. There's not much of an offset. There's a 0.1, which is fine. You want usually a 0.2. And the voltage here is 3.2. So you see at the top, it's 3.25 volts. Now, this is unterminated. And the gap between these wants to be 1.4 volts typically. And when you plug in an RGB cable, it drops to 0.7 volts. That's what we should expect. So this is miles over the expected voltage, like a big way over. So now if we plug in the cable, if we press play on the scope again, so it's not capturing, let's plug in the RGB cable. And let's connect this to the... Now, the problem is, it's connected to the OSSC. I find sometimes the OSSC doesn't behave correctly in terms of how it tries to pull down the signal, but it should do, hopefully. Right, we're still turned on. And now if we plug in, so if we look at that now, this should have halved the signal. And if we look at that, so it should go from 3.25 to 1.6 something. So half of that's about 1.6. So it should be around there. And you can see it's actually dropped lower. So it's dropped to 1 volt. So that means the output resistor, the 75 ohm, is not 75 ohm. So I'm guessing this is going to be a 68 ohm. If it is, then it's out of spec. So if we take a look over here, it says 75 ohm times 4, but the fact that we've just witnessed it divide more than 75 ohm means these are either out of spec or not quite right. So one way is we should correct these, but that much out of spec is not that far off. So we don't tend to fix these if they just say they're 68 ohm, they're not that far out of spec that we'd care. So if we just check a 75 ohm, let's unplug as well. So nothing's connected to the 75 ohm, and let's see. And we have, yeah, they are exactly 75 ohm on there. So that is possibly either under load causing the issue, or the CXA chip can't quite provide enough current for the 75 ohm. So even though there's a 75 ohm resistor there, this has got some internal resistance. So either way, on the scope, it's showing that we're not actually true 75 ohm. Whereas if we use something like the clean comp, which is why I'm tempted to make a clean RGB for this, we can guarantee the output's right. But ultimately, none of that matters so long as we see on that output waveform, when the cable's connected, we want to see 0.7 volts there, not 1 volt. So based on what I'd measured, it says we should replace these with 5.2. So we're going to replace it with a 5.3K resistor and use the scope to confirm what we get. That's how we're going to do this. So with these being smaller than standard, I'm just going to cut them out. And what I'm going to do is just cut out the top one. And I'm just going to use an SMD resistor. And in here we will have, if we trust this book, sometimes they're accurate, sometimes they're not. We will get, so we have an option between a 5.1 and a 5.6. I'm going to go 5.6 because you don't want it to be too bright. Well, actually saying that, it makes sense to go 5.1 if that was the case. But let's try 5.6 first and see where that gets us. And then we'll have to measure. We'll have one channel that's got a different measurement than the rest. And I can't remember which one that top resistor is off the top of my head. So we'll just probe the red, the green, and the blue until we see the one that's changed voltage compared to the others. And then for this, we will just probably have to use a bit of a wire because it's quite a gap. So I'm just going to solder one side there. Wow, that's quite out of focus. There we go. So I've soldered one side of the resistor. Zoom in. And then you can see that big gap. So I'm just going to use a bit of wire to bridge that gap. And then we'll do the same for the other two, but we're going to do one first. So we can see what the difference is. Otherwise, we'll have to change all three. I'll reshore that connection in a minute as well. Just, oh, where's he gone? Flung off. Let's put him roughly where he wants to be, which is there. Strip that wire. There we go. And then blob on. Blob on. And there we go. And then probably when we're done, I'll just use a little bit of flux to reflow them, but until we're happy this is the resistance we want, I'm just going to leave that there a minute. You can just use a multimeter to measure, it's never going to be as accurate. That's why I wanted to use the scope to show you that even though the multimeter's reading 75 ohm, the final output when it's under load is completely different. So that's likely the CXA chip not providing the correct impedance internally. So you can't beat the scope because that's what your TV has ultimately seen. And if you know that's correct, you know then it's outputting correct. So we now just need to power up and probe again. And one of those channels, if we've done it correctly, should have changed slightly. And hopefully it's changed to 0.7 volts. So if we pull up, we need to connect the AV cable to the output. There we go. Pull up the scope, and now one of these, if we press play, you can remember if we do a reference waveform, so let's just save the reference, press go, we will now have the faded output. So you can see that faded output is where it was. So let's try green again. Green's the same, so it wasn't green we changed. Blue's the same, red's the same. Okay, so nothing's changed. So have we done something wrong there? Or have we changed C-Sync? So nothing's changed on that output. Or maybe the mod that somebody's already done has bypassed those resistors. So let's see what's gone wrong on here then, because something, or rather, yeah, something basically hasn't changed. So let's go to the input pins, I guess, is a good place to start. And let's measure, depending on what side we do here. We have a voltage there, so let's drop that down. So I've just zoomed into twice the resolution to see. So we've got that side. Dropped this side. Maybe reset. There we go, so that crashed. I'm wondering whether this is on the other side for some reason. So let me just move that up to roughly there. We got it on screen, yeah. Put a filter on a minute to clean it up a little bit. And in fact, we can use a digital signal at 4 meg to really clean this up to what they see. So that's at 3.8 on that side. That's at 3.8. And that one is now higher. So this has been modified because that's gone higher, not lower. So this is the input side. Yeah, that's the input side that's high, you see. So on this side of the resistor is where we're seeing the volts drop. And you can see the voltage has gone up compared to the others. But based on what we're observing, this console's already had work done and it's got, different wires on. So the mod's been already done and bypassing something else. So we're going to have to investigate what has been done already because it's been changed. Or we could just change the resistor to a different value to correct for it. But let's just take a quick look at what's already been done. I'm guessing people are watching footy upstairs, shouting their head off. So they've had, they're cutting everything here. So we've bypassed everything. Fun. So we've got the RGB going into this chip. I think they've tapped on the input because here's the input. We want to tap on the output. If we flip over that. So what's happened is this mod has tapped straight off the inputs that we've just edited. These are the resistors. So they've gone straight on the input, not the output, and we don't want to do that. We want the output. So this needs to be undone, really, and we want to correct this. So let's undo this and remove these off because my mod is based on still using the CXA chip, not bypassing it because it has filters in. That's why it's not working, basically. So now the green has been cut from here that goes into this filter, which goes, the filters are still on. So we know the green should come down to here. So we could restore it by connecting this green back up to where the trace was cut, down to here and onto this filter. So that's what we'll do on this one. And we're having to basically revert the previous mod because that's not how it should be done. Like I say, what they've done here, and that explains why the 75 ohm was showing a difference in drop because they bypassed the 75 ohms. This is the problem. So you're outputting the completely wrong impedance. That's why the visual didn't match and the resistance didn't make sense. So that's the green restored. Let's just do the same for the other because we know they're going to have done the same for the others. So blue's been cut, goes around and goes to this one just below it. So let's restore that one. And you can probably remember that SNK where I said the blue should be like a royal blue and it's not. That's what you're you'll notice the most when you fix this mod. The red has been cut and goes straight to here. So if we restore that to there, and C-Sync doesn't matter. C-Sync's quite a flexible pin. I don't care about that. As long as it locks on as a signal, we know it's good. So even though the C-Sync might not be right, it does look like they have tapped off C-Sync off the chip, so I know that is good anyway, based on that. But they should have added a 75 ohm resistor here, and there's no resistor. So this should be 75 ohm terminated, but C-Sync honestly doesn't matter that much. It's not filtered so much. So we might just chuck a 75 ohm on after there. Other than that, I don't think they've modded anything there, which now means our resistor network should work again. So let's just see where we're at now. We're back to somewhere where we should be. It's more of a stock console. So we'll do the same measurement again. The first one is going to be with the... we can probe on top here as well, say flipping the board. These are the outputs. There's nothing connected at the minute to the port. So now if we pulled up the scope over the top, we might have to zoom out a bit. We're turned on, so we have one of the signals there. So now this is where the caps are going to have to come in to remove that DC offset. So we will have to put the caps back on this one, because unless we're going to do a full clean RGB mod, which we're not, we're doing the resistors, we'll have to actually put them caps on. So let's undo what I said with removing these caps. And let's just chuck some 470 ohm caps over these, and at least these get replaced then with new ones as well. But if you're doing a full, when I make a clean RGB mod for this system, like a full clean RGB universal, it will remove the output stage caps. You don't really want caps on the output stage because they can introduce things like field droop, where the image droops over time or changes color over time. So it's not something you want to typically do on the output. But everybody, until I made the clean RGB, that's literally how everybody does it. So it's not the end of the world, but it's something we want to improve on. I'm going to chuck in probably 1,000 microphones. Yeah, let's chuck the thousands in, and we'll just have them sticking up. And these are again decent makes. These are another make, which I forget. That's the make of these. I just liked the red ones. Worth the make of these ones is. So these are good caps as well, but I just like them sometimes because of the colour, so they stand out. So let's use the caps to remove that DC offset. And we will, I don't know, we poke them through or just solder them on top for now. I'll tell you what, let's just solder them up in the air for now, and I'll clean this up after, because we don't really care about the visual for now. I'll wrap this up after, or shall we just, tell you what, let's just pass them through. Let's just do it properly. Or is it going to take a bit more time to do it this way? There we go, that's through, not too bad. I'm on the wrong camera, couldn't see any of that then. But I'm just quickly redoing these caps. So that's one done. With the others, let's just clean the hole so it's a bit easier. And I think because we cut these caps, we're still going to have the legs in here as well, actually saying that. So, touching it off. Burning my finger off. Those have fell through now. These ones are stubborn, so let's just get the hot air and desolder pump on them. Stuff for German modders, yeah, we ship all over the world. So we have international shipping on everything. And we also have, there's silent modding in the EU, and there is retro Reese as well. So in terms of like buying our products, you've got a few options already, but you can just buy straight off us. But in terms of modding, we do the mods. We do the mods here. I'm not sure whether the resellers do mods like us. Like they'll sell our products. I don't know so much whether they'll do repairs, but you can always send it in to us to have, you know, the mods done. We do them from, you know, all over the world basically. That's all them cleared off. Now we can just pass the caps through. So we almost got away with not doing the caps on these, but turns out we ended up needing them anyway. That's them four. It's got the, I need to just disable that long message warning. That's a pointless warning, really. People write more than 10 characters, the bot tells them off. Right, so now we have them in. We just need to solder the resistor pads back in. I think we're slightly out of focus again. There we go, nice and short focus. And then this should give us the DC offset removed, and we can measure then the voltage. And I think we should be, if I did everything right before when I made the wiki, the voltages will already be correct with that 5.6 K resistor on already. Just tidy this desk up again. We're back to a bit of a mess again somehow. That's a bit cleaner. Right, there we go. So we've got the caps back on. We can flip over. We want to measure again the output with nothing on, back to where we just tried to do. If we put the scope over now, that's running. So now on here, the scope's still going to show because it's not loading it down, but we know that's going to drop. So what we want now is the voltage on here. So the voltage gap between here and here. So that's the 1.6. So we're closer. That needs to be 1.4. So if we looked at the scope there, you can see now the gap between the 2 points is 1.6. it needs to be 1.4. So if we now check the others, because we might have one that's already been changed, there's the one we've obviously changed. So now that will be the one with the resistor on. And if we measure, probe on the right point, if we measure that gap now, we can obviously move this up as well to capture. This is hopefully around the 1.4. So there you go. Look at that. Couldn't be any more accurate. 1.405. So that will be the 5.6K resistor that we changed on here. So that is the one that's perfect. And now if we change that for the others, we should have absolutely perfect output. So let's just do that on the other two resistors, and we should be good to go. And then I'll just use the surface mount again. The reason I use the surface mount is because these resistors are slightly smaller than stock resistors that I have in, so they end up not fitting and sticking up in the air. So I just tend to wire in the SMD resistors with a little bit of wire. The other option is you can just use the other resistors and, you know, stick them up in the air. One, two. So I'll probably update the wiki as well, because the 5.6 is actually absolutely perfect, like literally 0.05 volts off. So we've got 5.2 written down, but 5.6 in this case is a standard resistor and is also super accurate. So I'll update the wiki in a minute with that. Get them two on there. To there, and now just the extra wire. And he is rusty. Let's see if I can I'll turn this thing around. Where's it going? Is it going to find a pug on the floor? Yes, it is. I'm not running you over. I haven't got any food in here. I'm going to have to find some food. Where have you gone? No. There we go. Oh, he's sniffing the PlayStation. I see you. Rusty Cam. Where are you going? He's off. Checking out. Oh, he's getting in his bed. Nope, nothing in here. Checking goods in. Checking if the Amigas are good. And he's off. He's found somebody for food. Let's get back to what we were doing in a minute. All right, let's come back in. Definitely gonna have to feed the pug in a minute. There's that one. Unit. He's a nice slender 10 kilograms, I'll have you know. the maximum weight a pug should be. Excuse me, knocking everything over. That's because he's not getting fed. I'll go feed him in a sec. Let's just see if this now works. Where's he going now? Oh, he's chilling in his bed now. 2 minutes. Where is he? There we go. He's waiting for me to finish and feed him now. Oh yeah. Slipping all over the floor. You're not having food. Oh, he's not happy. Oh, PlayStation. Right, let's wrap this up so I can actually spend some time with him. So we've got them 3 up. I'll give the board a dishwasher after this to clean everything up, so we're not worried too much about cleaning up just now. But we've got them 3 resistors on. We should now measure the same voltage. I'm going to have to move this camera back to me now. Got to position it, remembers. Yeah, not far off. So let's measure the 3 outputs to make sure they're all that 1.4 volts we saw. And then we'll terminate it and see what we get on termination. So PC over, that's running. So now they should all be within that 1.4. Yeah, so that one's slightly shifted up. There's that one. There's that one. Yeah, so other than ignoring that's the C-Sync. Well, actually, that's composite rather, not C-Sync. So yeah, the top 3 are right within that range. That one's just got a different capacitance, so it's higher up. So obviously that's why the rails are slightly higher. So now if we plug in the cable to terminate, these resistors should drop right down. And now you can see this is where the capacitance kicks in. And now you'll see that's why they are floating over the ground. So technically, ground is here, and you can see the signals dip below. And this is the capacitors, them large capacitors doing this. So if we now measure from there to there, you can see, give or take, 0.06 volt, which is negligible. And it could also be the smoothing on this scope. That's where we want it to be. It wants to be 0.7. So in theory, it might even want to be like, 5.8 to be absolutely perfect. But that'll be the variance in those 75 ohm resistors that are slightly off. So that's well within range now, and certainly a lot closer than we had before. So now let's put in a game, and you'll see the difference in the colour now. So remember that SNK, that was really light blue, and everything kind of seemed to merge and blend. We should now have a much nicer visual. So let's go over and let's see if we can tell. And again, the only problem with these receivers, yeah, the SNK still looks a little bit bright on there, but by eye, it isn't. So that has got less blur on. Oh, nice audio. I'll turn that off, and that's because I've got the same ground connected to the capture software as the console. So the best way to test this, I've found, because it's hard to tell on this receiver, let me try and plug this in to the actual CRT. The OSSC will automatically compensate and boost the voltages, so we'd have to correct for that to see, but the scope is ultimately the answer for valid signals. The fact you've seen the valid signals means that the voltage is the correct level when it obviously gets used by proper monitors. So let's reset that. Yeah, so that's the colour. Let me show you on screen here. And this is what, if I move my face out the way of the camera, this is what it should look like. Oh, but unfortunately, we definitely can't keep we can't do the connection because the live stream is interfering with the audio, because I've got everything grounded through the same ground. So because the PC is connected to the same ground, that's why we keep getting this sound issue. But I could turn the sound down, I guess, for a minute. Probably one solution. So see yeah, it's hard to tell on screen. Unfortunately, I'm going to have to find a good way to show you this, because it's also automatically exposing the camera and making it really bright. So I'm not really sure of a good way to show you that it looks correct, if you know what I mean. But my eyes are telling me, obviously, that's exactly correct. The only way I can think is to see if I can get this OSSC to not automatically adjust this gain. Let's go back to there a second. Now I've got a pug under my feet, so I can't put my chair back in. Let me see if I've got... you have to turn that off. Yeah, it's not even turned on at the minute. Let me see if I can go into the menu and alter. Have I got the... I don't think I've even got the menu for this, the remote control anywhere. No, I haven't. I haven't got a remote control. And we don't think we can do it from here. No, I haven't got the control on it. So that's kind of annoying, because I want to show you the visual change, if you know what I mean. Like the fact it's visually on screen looks correct now. But unfortunately, you're going to have to take my word for it that that's improved visually. At least you've seen it on the scope, so you know it's actually correct. Let me see. Yeah, that doesn't look too bad. But that sound glitch is really annoying me. So, to be honest, we might actually be a sound issue on there. This might have further issues, because I do this quite a lot and we don't normally get that issue with sound. We might be onto another issue we need to fix. And I'm just looking down here as well. They don't look too clean, do they? Those pins there don't look too clean. Don't know that's got anything at all to do with it. But let me just reflow them, because I'm not 100% that they aren't a problem. Right, they look better now. Let's see if that audio, we don't even have to have it showing on screen for that audio to work. I think it comes through anyway. So let's just try that now with audio. Pretty sure it doesn't have to be on screen to, maybe it does. Let's see what that's done. But yeah, I'll work on trying to get this. Well, I just need the remote for the OSSC to sort that out. But let's just see if this corrupts the audio still. Yeah, so we may well have. See if we get corruption through here. Let's turn that down on the monitor. See if. Yeah, so I think we might have an issue with sound somewhere there we can look at afterwards. But yeah, there you go. That's now showing a nice colour there, not too over. So that doesn't look too bad visually compared to what you see. But it's still slightly overcompensating the voltages there. I'd like to try and fix the OSSC. Let me just see if I can find, if Rusty will move out of the way, see if I can find the OSSC remote a minute. Ah, yeah, it's over here. Because I think it's got the gain on the output. You can obviously tune these things. So video in processing. It should be showing on screen actually there. Let's turn that on a minute so we can actually see. Alright, so let's turn this gain down because we don't want any gain. That's probably what the issue is there, the 8 gain. No, so it's not changing it. Pre-ADC gain. Right, is that it? So, turn off, turn on. 7, 8. Is it the offset? I think it's just how. Oh, hang on, I know what it is. I think it's this actual capture. The HDMI capture, I think, has got filters on it. Let me see. Edit filters. No, it's not got filters. Properties. Configure video. it's not letting me configure video. Let me try deactivating. Configure video. Yeah, it's not letting me edit the HDMI capture, unfortunately. I think it's just the cheap USB capture card I'm using, so I can't configure it. So yeah, it's going to be that. What I'm going to have to do is update the USB capture card that's capturing the HDMI is adding the slightly over-coloured, so that's why we can't see it as accurate. So yeah, that's that bit done. But I think we have a problem with sound. So I don't want to go too deep into this because Rusty's pestering me for a bit of relaxed time. But let's just have a look over the board, see if we spot anything for what could be causing the corrupt audio. So audio is, where are we? This is the 68K. This is the audio processor, and there's two kinds of audio. There's, I think it's PGM, and there's digital audio. And then the audio comes out and goes to this amp here. So we're looking around this general area for anything we spot, basically any issues or rotten traces. And just bear in mind, there was a rotten trace here. So the chances are we've got, just notice that camera's disappeared to the sky as well. We could have rotten traces around, somewhere around here on the audio, because clearly we're getting corrupt audio. And we could also have a bad Yamaha. These sometimes go bad. My guess is going to be the fact we had a broken trace here. We're probably going to have a broken trace somewhere around here as well. And we could have some issues here. And if we want to check where we need to look, I can pull up the schematic if we don't have it open still. So we're done with the scope for now. Let's pull up the schematic. And if we look at the computer, let's just take a look at where, I think I've done the audio on the wiki already in detail, but let's see if we can find audio anywhere. There, the clocks, that's power, so it's above them. That's the cartridge, that's video. Here we go. So this is the audio in general. So we've got the big Yamaha chip that gets data coming into it. So that's this big one here. And that gets the digital audio through the SDD and the SDA. So the sound, data, and address lines come in. Then we have all the sound going out as a RAD. And then we get the buffers here, or the amp, the YM3016, which ultimately amplifies it out to what we hear on the outputs. So the outputs are here, the OPO and the two samples and the SD. So one's a digital sound and one is an analog sound. And I feel like the analog out, pin 27, it sounds more like digital noise to me. So this analog pin could be the source of the noise that goes up and mixes in afterwards, or it could be digital noise. Now we could test that by probing specifically. We could either lift the pin, pin 27, and probe it, or we could cut the trace. There's multiple ways we can do to test it, or we could remove C301 and probe it with the audio to see. But I'm not going to do any of that for now. It sounds like digital noise to me. So I reckon it's going to be the data and addresses here, somewhere in the schematic. So SDA and SDD, we'd have to find those rails. So SDA comes in here, so the Z80 is helping to generate the sound, and the Neo D0. So they're probably the ones we want to take a quick look at. The Z80 is over here, so here's the Z80, and the D0 is here. So these two are critical in sound as well. Looking at them at a quick glance, can't specifically see anything. Maybe zoom in a little bit. And bear in mind, we're probably looking for those slightly darker traces or black lines. And you could also be dealing with like a bad D0 chip. There's so many places it could be. That's one of the problems with the Neo Geos. They've got so many traces all over the board that can rot that it could be anywhere, and it can be those address and data pins. So we've got a light bit of black there. Nope. Maybe one there. And it can also be the pins of the cartridge connector as well, because the cartridge can generate sound and send it in. So it can be processed as the game's running from the cartridge. So a semi-common thing is just the cartridge being bad, like, you know, the cartridge port being bad. So I think the only thing we're realistically going to do for today, just with time constraints, is we'll just heavily spray this cartridge port with IPA and see if that prevents the noise. And then other than that, I think it's going to be a long-winded process of diagnostics that's really its own thing. It's not something we're going to solve quick, I don't think. So let's put this back in, turn that on, put that on screen, and turn that off and on. I think I've messed up the HDMI now as well somehow. Oh yeah, I deactivated the video. That's that. Go to there. And then turn the sound back up. And let's just sit and wait. See if we get any corrupt audio. And it's got further than before, so maybe it's just the cartridge port. It's a very common issue. It'd be nice, because then that's the problem solved. There you go. See how the blue's nicer as well now? I don't know whether resetting that USB's helped a little bit. But yeah, the colour does look perfect on, you know, the CRT. You just can't kind of tell on video. But I'm going to work on trying to make this RGB capture really accurate, so when we do things like this, you can actually see the result, because I feel like you can't really see the result perfectly there. Yeah, so I think we've fixed the sound. There's no sound issue there. So it was just obviously a bad cartridge port. So what I'll do is dishwasher this, and then IPA it, and then I'll probably vinegar bath the cartridge connector as well to make sure this is all nice and clean. And that should make sure the customer doesn't get that kind of sound issue as well. Right, I think that's it. And I think Rusty has... Yeah, Rusty's left me. He's give up. So I better go and feed him before he gets too miserable with me. And then I will be maybe on tomorrow. I've got a busy few days, so you may or may not see me. But hopefully you guys have enjoyed this one. And I'll try and fix that video output a little bit. And other than that, that's another one fixed, and the customer can have this back now.